Hello there, today I am here with my non-booktube review. Now if you've been following my videos this month, you will know that I have been doing something called Not the Normal November, where I have been reading books that I wouldn't particularly gravitate towards otherwise. And one of the books that I picked up for this was Ivy and Abe by Elizabeth Enfield. I actually got this because I went to a writing workshop a few weeks ago and we worked with two writers, and Elizabeth was the writer that we worked with in the afternoon, and she's such a lovely woman, so I'm probably a bit biased with this. But I picked this up because a lot of the workshop that she was talking to us about was about building characters and understanding how your characters would react in certain situations, which relates very nicely to this book, because this is about a couple called Ivy and Abe, and it's effectively a collection. I wouldn't call them short stories, but they're little vignettes, and it's basically, I think on the cover it's described as Sliding Doors meets One Day, and that does make complete sense. So we follow the couple at snippets in kind of different alternate lives. So in one life, for instance, they meet when they're very old and get married. In another life, they will just come across each other but never get to know each other. In another life, they meet each other when they're very young and embark on a kind of teenage romance which doesn't really follow them through for their lives. But in every scenario, somehow Ivy and Abe meet at these different ages, and it looks at how their lives would change depending on when they met each other, and also how they change towards each other depending on when they meet each other. There are some similar factors in all of the lives. So for instance, Abe's mother has a big thing about hay bales on the back of lorries, and in a lot of the lives she is involved in an accident, or that Abe's family somehow is involved in an accident involving a hay bale. And with Ivy, her mother always has a degenerative illness which Ivy has a fear of getting herself. But other than those similar things, the lives are completely different. It's completely changed around. In one life, Ivy and Abe have kids together, and in a lot of lives Ivy is with a man called Richard, and has kids with him. At one point they cheat together, Ivy and Abe. I have to say I put this in with Not the Normal November because it's kind of, as pretty as it is, it's kind of a romancy cover that I probably wouldn't gravitate towards if I saw it in a shop. In truth, I only bought it because A, Elizabeth was so lovely, and B, because I wanted to see how this character interaction altered. And I have to say, I really thoroughly enjoyed this a lot more than I was expecting to. I wasn't expecting it to be my kind of thing, but actually I was pleasantly surprised. I think there was a lot of interest in here, and I think it really looks at, it's kind of along the same vein, although without the magical realism that I love so much, but it's kind of along the same vein of Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, for instance, with this idea that we have these people that are just destined to be in our lives, you know, and it's not always a romantic thing. Sometimes they just help each other out in some small way. For instance, there's one scenario where Abe just gives Ivy some taxi money when she's just got out of hospital, and it just looks, as I say, at how they interact with each other, and I think from a character point of view this is a really interesting read, especially going into it having had that workshop all about character. Reading it with that in mind is really fascinating because it's something that makes complete sense but I'd never really thought that much about, is the fact that, as Elizabeth said in her workshop, a character is always going to be different depending on who they're with. You know, in life we change the way we speak, we even change our body language and our habits depending on the person that we're with. We do it unconsciously, but it's important to capture that kind of thing in fiction, and I think this really shows how our interactions with certain characters can be different and how that all depends upon the situations in our lives. I just found it truly fascinating. I think it is kind of Sliding Doors-esque. It's got a touch of One Day in there. It's also slightly along the same vein of Life After Life, where it's sort of about doing it over again. There's not so much a idea of going back and redoing things because it is completely different scenarios. We start when Ivy and Abe are in old age and we go all the way back to when they are 10. I think if you go into this not expecting it to be a full, like, plot-driven novel, because it's not. It doesn't have that overarching plot that I think a lot of people might reach for in a book. But as I say, it's just about the character, and yet you won't feel isolated for reading it. You won't feel as though you can't grasp it. It's very approachable, it's very readable. I literally sat down and just got lost in it, and I found that it was really fun to read as well. It was kind of, I don't often read, and I think this is another reason why I thought it might not be for me, I don't often read fun, bubbly books, but this was like sitting down to read this of an evening, especially I've had quite a stressful week, so sitting down to read this was like wrapping yourself in a blanket, having a cup of tea and just being able to completely switch off, which was really lovely. It was still only a 3 stars for me because I think ultimately I have to judge it against other books, for instance, that I have given 4 stars. Though it was a pleasant surprise and I thoroughly enjoyed the reading experience of it, I don't know how much the story itself is actually going to stick with me, but if it sounds like your kind of thing, I would definitely recommend this, and if you're interested in character, I would recommend this as well, and I will see you next time. Bye!